Alright guys, hopefully this is gonna work out this time. I'm trying a little something different with my video, audio, AV experience. This looks a little different than the last time we saw, huh? Good shape. So just to recap what I did off camera here, number one was get rid of the mouse nest. Clean that up. I sanded down the top surface of this and gave it a coat of zinc primer and another coat of black gloss engine enamel. Not entirely necessary, but I just wanted to prevent having any exposed aluminum here just for corrosion purposes. That it looks parity. So got this all nice and cleaned up, vacuumed out down there as far as I could. Can't find anything else. Paint's dry. Cleaned up the shaft, checked for any grooving. Everything feels good. Right up here where you can see these two faint lines, there's a little bit of grooving, but it's really minor, and that's actually where it rides in the seal and the roller bearing and the drive shaft housing. But nothing major there, so okay with that. So part 2 of this video is going to be reassembly, which for the most case is reverse of assembly, but I'm just going to give you guys a rundown of the proper way to do this, because there's a couple minor little things in there. The number one thing I'm going to tell you right now is there's kind of different views on this, opinions I guess you could say, and it's these things right here. So Mercruiser sells these. I decided to make these on my lathe because I'm cheap. I don't know how much they are for Mercruiser, but these are alignment pins. So what these do is they actually thread into the drive shaft housing, and it's an M6 thread and I believe a 7mm diameter on top here. And what that does, if I can do this without losing everything. So the new plate, when you go to put it on, actually goes over these pins. Now this one, I actually don't know. I've never ordered one like this before where the gasket's actually overmolded onto the plate. So I don't know if this is actually going to fit through there or not. Doesn't look like it is. So actually maybe these are correctly sized for the actual bolts themselves. So take a peek here. Yeah, it's actually a really tight fit. So that's what they did. Okay, scrap that. So normally, if you have this individual plate with the two gaskets that go on top and bottom as 3 individual pieces, you would use these alignment pins because the holes are oversized on everything and you can get misalignment, especially with this. This is actually where it really comes in handy. And I may still use it for this, I'm not sure. But see how these holes fit a 7mm dowel pin, but on the bolts that actually hold them, there's actually a lot of clearance. And what happens is if you put that on and you don't have the alignment perfect, this housing can move around, and you can actually get a case where it's shifted off and rubbing on the shaft. It'll actually wear out the shaft, wear out the housing, and you'll get leaks around here. No good. So get some alignment pins. They're not that expensive, I don't think, or make them if you have a lathe or know somebody. Okay, so step 1, now that everything's cleaned up, is going to be to take the housing, which I cleaned nice and shiny, looks a little different than the last one, and a piece of something there, your new impeller. And what we're going to do is actually apply a little bit of grease to the inside of the housing so it's a little bit easier on the first startup. You kind of rotate it in. So let me do that real quick, and then let me get some grease and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, got my grease. Anything will work here. It's really just the 2 main purposes is to make it a little bit easier to start up, and also just makes it a little bit easier to get the actual impeller, the new impeller in. So just kind of rub it on the inside surface of the impeller housing. Just kind of lubricate it up. You could use grease, oil, engine assembly lube, pretty much anything. You just really don't want dry rubber on metal kind of as your first startup. This will just kind of help out a little bit. There we go. Cap back on the grease. There is no top or bottom to these, so it can go in that way or that way. But what you want to do on a standard rotation is actually kind of spin this in like this. There we go. So you actually want your fins going kind of that way, so you want to spin it in counterclockwise. I don't have the old impeller to show you, but you can reference your old impeller if you need to see which way it's going, but you'd also need to know which one's top and bottom there. But so as you can see, when you line up the hole here with the hole on the housing, it's actually slightly offset. That's actually how it pumps. The valleys over here are actually smaller and get bigger as you go around. So it's actually taking the water, sucking it up through here, actually, through, why am I not? Yeah, okay, yeah. It kind of spins it, look it up, it's like a vein pump. Okay, so the impeller's in. Make sure it's seated down nice and tight. You want to get that hole reasonably lined up. You can look down from the top too, it makes it a little easier. I'm going to set this aside. Next thing I'm going to do is put on my new plate and gasket. With this thing, I'm also just going to throw, actually, I'm going to use my world's favorite stuff, Permatech Aviation Forma Gasket. It's my commercial or something. So this stuff pretty much works on everything. It's kind of like the better version of Never Seas. So just take that, run it around the bottom side. And really the reason I'm doing this is just to prevent it from kind of sticking really badly the next time I need to do this. Other than that, it's not really necessary. Okay, that's good enough. So this will go down like this. And I believe the holes on these are slightly offset, so if you actually have this flipped upside down or spun any weird way, the holes actually won't line up perfectly, so it's kind of keyed in that way. Okay, so now I'm going to put in my 2 alignment dowels. So I'll thread one in here. You don't really need to thread them in super tight, and these are actually a little bit tight since I got a little bit of paint in the threads. I probably should have chased them, but it's all right, they're going in. Okay, so there's my alignment dowels. So next, what's next? Oh, the new key. So on this, once again with the grease, and the reason you want to do the grease on this is because it'll actually help hold the key in place on the shaft. If you don't have grease there, it'll kind of have a tendency to fall off. So if you can see this, let me spin the shaft. There's a flat here that this key goes on, and then this rib on the key is actually what locks the impeller to the shaft and makes it spin with it. So we're just gonna use a little bit of grease there and it just helps it hold it. So that's good. I think we should be done with the grease now. Set that up there. Okay. So next is actually going to be installing the impeller itself. So before we do that, you just kind of want to look down through here and see where the shaft is, where the impeller housing's got to go, which is this way. And we just want to kind of line up the shaft in the neighborhood of where the slot is in the impeller. Because if you don't, it's not going to go on. Okay, so now that we got that lined up, make sure I'm not missing anything here. Every time. Oh, it's Jay again. What are the odds? Hey Jay, how's it going?
Hey.
Calling back, perfect timing.
100%.
Okay. Hey, I actually got the drive cleaned up pretty much, and I think I'm getting ready to kind of put everything back together. I got the new gasket on, impellers installed in the housing, but is there anything that you'd recommend for installing the new impeller housing on? Any specific tricks or anything? I got the alignment dowels in, got the impellers installed the correct way. Yeah. So, what's the best way to install this thing?
I'll show you how to do that here in a second.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it on then, because I don't know when you're gonna tell me to do it.
Take a sip of my beer here as I take in the beauty of it.
Alright, so we slide this down. Yeah, I'm talking to the camera, Jay, so don't worry about that.
100%.
Okay. Oop. And here is a case of me putting the dowels in the wrong spots, I think. Come on, Jay, you're supposed to catch that kind of stuff.
I can't do that anymore.
Nah, I'm just teasing. Hey Jay, this might be a little bit off the cuff, but what's your personal philosophy on life?
You know the squeaky wheel gets the grease?
Okay. Can you explain that a little?
Here comes the tricky part.
Yeah, maybe we should save this conversation for another time.
100%.
Hey Jay, how's the scimitar project coming along?
The hemorrhaging of money continues with Friscoboater.
Yeah, hear you on that one. Break out another 1,000. Man, they're struggling to go in. Yeah, I heard you were able to start a disassembly on the motor though. Get that thing out?
We are 100% with that piece.
Awesome. You seem to measure a lot of things in percentages.
100%.
Anyway, so back to the Outdrive. When you install a new impeller, do you put grease on it when you put it in the housing?
A lot of times these things go in perfectly.
Yeah, now you can get them to go in, but I mean, aren't you kind of afraid the impeller's going to kind of get torn up without any grease on the first start?
100%.
Hear you on that one. That's what I was thinking. Alright Jay, well I'm actually gonna get back to this. I gotta figure these alignment pins out, so I'll let you go. I'll give you a call back when I'm done and let you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you think I did a good job. Alright. See you, Jay. Sorry about that, guys. Can't not answer a call by Jay. There we go. Okay. Alright, so now you can see the alignment pins are doing their job. I got a nice even gap around here. Alright, so now that this is on, next step is going to be just reinstalling the 4 bolts that go in here. So you do the 2 opposite ones first, and then once those are tight, you can remove your dowel pins and this won't move back around. And I'm just going to throw on my magic sauce here on these bolts. Alright, so through the magic of editing, aka my memory card dying and me finishing up this entire job to realize that I missed half the footage, I'm back. So that was on here. Everything was done, but doing it again for the people. For the people. Okay. So let's recap what I literally just did. 4 bolts are in, torqued down nice and tight. Not tight like the spec tight, which I think was 25 and click. So these are down tight, all 4. The next thing we're gonna do is to take this thing and this thing. There's 2 O-rings inside of here, which I've already replaced, so I'm not taking them back out. You pick like this, you get underneath the O-ring, pop them out. This is what they look like when they're dirty and on the floor. There's 2 of those in there, they're the same O-ring, so your kit's gonna come with two of them, and they're going to look the same, and they can go in either slot. So there's one at the bottom and one at the top. I just cleaned this up real quick with some degreaser, put in the new O-rings, and a little bit of oil around each O-ring just to lubricate it, make everything go together easier. And then this piece, cleaned it up, and that literally just sits in the top of this funnel. And all this is a guide tube. So when the two halves go together, the water tube, which is right up here, I don't know if you can see that, probably not on the video, but the water tube on the upper drive shaft housing, when it comes down, all this does is help line it up, make sure it goes in the right place. So this O-ring on the bottom here seals on this tube on the water pump housing, and because I put grease on the O-ring, it's actually trying to push back up through just hydraulic pressure, so kind of spinning it to get some of that air out so it'll stay. So that is good there. Next thing we're going to do again is the seal, the shaft seal over the housing. So this is the new seal. This is the seal installation tool. I have a little bit of oil on here, or grease, whatever, just to help lubricate it going on. That slides down over the shaft like this with the flange at the bottom there. So slide it down carefully. You don't want to just go jamming it down, because you just want to get it started. And then you take your installation tool like this, slide it down over the shaft. Use that, compress all the way down nice and tight. Take the shaft, pull it up while pushing down on the tool, release it, and that's it. So that sets the seal to the correct depth. So seal's on, tube's on. Last thing we need to do is this quad ring, which is kind of like a square cross-section O-ring, and that goes right in here. And I already removed the old seal, obviously, because once again, second time doing it. Although I now just noticed there's a little bit of gunk in there. Get that cleaned out. And just a little bit of grease or oil on this, which is already there. That pops down into that recess. And what that does is that actually creates a seal between the gear case housing and the drive shaft housing right here, because that's the oil passage for the gear lube oil. Okay, so quad ring in, tube and guide on, shaft seal on, bolts are torqued down nice and tight. Housing's lined properly. Check, 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 check. Oh, since I did paint this, I did touch, or I got some paint on these dowel pins, so I went around with some sandpaper and make sure I got any paint off, to make sure they can still go together. And at this point, oh, one last thing. I took some grease and ran it around the inside and outside of this water tube on the drive shaft housing. Again, just to make sure it goes into that O-ring inside of there, that new O-ring, without tearing it. So I feel like I just did this, because I did. Okay, so now the muscle part of the job is getting this gear shaft house, or drive shaft housing on. So one thing I want to show you here before I do this is this opening here for the exhaust port. That actually is a really convenient place to look down and see. If you look down in there, you can't, but I can see the end of the water tube from the upper drive shaft housing, and we can use that window to help align this as we drop it down. Easier said than done, because it's not heavy at all. And now I can't see what I just said I did last time. There it is. That's in the tube. Cool. It just drops right down, and the reason that dropped right down this time is because I already had it off. But you may find that it doesn't drop down all the way. You kind of heard that metallic clank when it dropped down. What you want to do in that case is just take the input shaft and try spinning it. A lot of times the splines on the drive shaft housing are not lined up with the splines on the shaft going down to the gear case housing. So just giving this a little twist will get those splines lined up, and it'll drop the rest of the way. So even though it's dropped down, you may have a gap back here in the back and the front, but that's normal. That's just those dowel pins, which are nice tight fit the way they're supposed to be. And when you install the bolts, that'll help bring everything together. So that is it for the impeller change, guys. I'm not going to show you reinstalling all the bolts. That would be a waste of everybody's time. Just remember, when you put these bolts back in, to excuse me, do a coat of either anti-seize or thread sealant. I like this stuff again. Just help protect it from corrosion. And yeah, that's it. Just torque it down to the specs in the manual, and your impeller change is done, guys. Simple job. You should really do this every few years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, depending on the amount of boating you do. But yeah, don't let it go too long, because one good way to kill an engine is burn up an impeller. Overheating is bad stuff. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Tried breaking this one into 2 videos. Let me know what you guys think of that, the shorter form. We'll see what you guys think. So that is gonna do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys found this informational, and if you don't mind, share it with your boating friends. Like it, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Instagram, or whatever, I don't care. Just hope you guys like these. We'll catch you on the next one, which, as long as everything goes according to plan, which it never does, but I plan on doing the trim ram reseal kit. Again, did that once before, so I know kind of what I'm doing, so I'll make a video on that. And that's actually one of the ones, when I did that, there was like 0 videos online on that process, so I think that'll be a good one to have done and get out there. So that'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. See ya.